This is predicated on the idea that substance use is a learning process, that you learn to use and that you learn certain things that lead you to use, and that as such, you can unlearn this. So broadly speaking, we've got a lot of different what we call cognitive interventions or cognitive behavioral interventions, which are predicated on the idea that you want to be able to teach someone skills to better recognize their triggers, that you want to teach them skills of how to avoid high-risk situations, and you want to teach them skills for how to cope with cravings that they may have. So the way that we do this is we think about, okay, well, what kind of skills? We want to actually actively teach you how to refuse. Let's role play in the office. You know, Bob comes up to you and says, hey, let's go smoke a joint. How are you going to say, I'm going to play the role of Bob, you're going to play the role of you. How are you going to say no to Bob? Let's practice this. In other words, let's learn how to say no to that particular situation. Let's learn how to put some time between you and the decision. So Bob comes up to you and says, hey, let's go, let's go to the bar. How are you going to delay giving Bob an answer? Because if you delay, if you put some time between you and the decision, you're more likely to be able to opt for the option that's more consistent with your goal of not using. How do you recognize, tolerate, and counteract painful feelings? Let's talk through what you're craving, what you experience with your cravings. Let's recognize when those are happening, and let's recognize that when they're happening, you may need to talk it through with somebody. And then how can we better foster healthy sources of reinforcement? In other words, let's try to tip the balance so that there are things that you are more interested in doing and engaging in than taking that drink. Again, this is manualized, this is very structured. What you're really doing is you're teaching skills in the moment. Again, this is not lie on the couch, tell me about when you were potty trained, like all that stuff. This is specific skills. So the way this may look is that it's typically done in sort of an 8 to 12 week manualized structured session, and it uses role play, homework practice, functional analysis, and it has this phenomenon that we call sleeper effect. By this we mean that someone who has gone through 8 to 12 weeks of cognitive behavioral therapy may show down the road that they actually have internalized something and that they actually are better off than people who didn't get the 8 to 12 weeks. So when they've compared people subsequent to getting, people who got 8 to 12 weeks of cognitive behavioral therapy, they look at them a year out relative to a cohort of people who didn't get cognitive behavioral therapy a year out. How are those two different groups doing? The group that got the cognitive behavioral therapy did better than the group that didn't. Now, I put the wonderful image up here of the piano because I tell people that this is like learning a musical instrument. This is like learning a new language. It's going to take practice and it's going to take time. And that's why there's homework, there's practice in the session, there's role play. There's this idea of the functional analysis. When we talk about that, what we're talking about is basically somebody relapsed in the week between the appointments. Let's talk about that relapse. People can have a tendency to kind of minimize what happened. Let's talk about it in vivid detail. Okay, what happened here? What happened there? What things, oh, okay, so early in the morning you had that conversation with your mom. And then ever since then, you were feeling a little bit unsteady through the day. So maybe the relapse actually started not when you picked up the drink at the bar, but when you had that conversation with mom in the morning. The place to intervene, the place to recognize that you're vulnerable is when you have that bad interaction with mom, or you have that kind of bad interaction with someone. So then you can kind of hone in on, okay, it's not just when you sat down at the bar. When you sat down at the bar, the cow was already out of the barn, so to speak. Let's figure out what we can do to prevent the barn door from opening in the first place.
Does someone you love suffer from drug addiction? Accidental drug overdoses are the #1 cause of unnatural deaths. Don't wait until it's too late. Call our 24/7 helpline at 1-800-648-6734. A caring addiction specialist is awaiting your call.